Good evening, everyone. Today we'll be starting the topic anti-tubercular agents or drugs. So, as a bit of introduction on tuberculosis. Tuberculosis is a kind of communicable chronic disease caused by Mycobacterium tuberculosis, which can invade various tissues and organs of your whole body. So, it can be associated with different organs. Basically, it affects the lungs, but it can affect most part of your body. Okay. The Mycobacterium are slow-growing intracellular bacilli that cause tuberculosis. So they are so slow-growing intracellular. So they intracellular bacilli. So when they are present intracellular, and they are present intracellular. In the past decade, tuberculosis cases have significantly increased, chiefly among the AIDS and homeless, because of your compromised immune system. These people are much more susceptible to your tuberculosis. Are more susceptible to tuberculosis. So tuberculosis is the response of mycobacterial infection to the chemotherapy slow, as I said, because they are slow growing. Okay, and the treatment is administered for a long period of 4 months or years, depending upon which drugs are used, depending upon the type of infection and the drugs given. So the chemotherapy may extend for months or years. Usually a combination of a regime is required in the treatment of your tuberculosis. Otherwise, microbial resistance is, or which is notorious in case of single drug treatment, because in case of single drug treatment, this particular microorganisms develop resistance to the drugs. Okay. So how are the infections spread? How the mycobacterial infections spread? So mycobacteria are converted into your droplets. These droplets are expelled while you are coughing and sneezing, and they gain entry into the body through inhalation. That is, they are airborne diseases. Tubercular bacilli then spread to your body, to your other body organs via blood and lymphatic system. So they can be transported to another part of the body through your blood and lymphatic system. Tubercular bacilli may become dormant or walled off by calcified or your fibrous tissue. So they can be dormant when by forming a protective coat of calcium or your fibrous tissues. Okay, this is how they spread. Now, the major portion of your tubercular bacilli become intracellular. That is, they reside inside your macrophages. They reside inside your macrophages, and due to this, they are inaccessible for majority of your antibiotics, as they cannot penetrate easily into your macrophage. So they engulf inside the macrophage, and these antibiotics cannot enter the macrophage. So that's why it is considered to be incurable disease. But now some of your chemotherapeutic agents have been designed which can penetrate into your macrophages and show the anti-tubercular effect. Okay. So let us see some of the classification of your TB. So TB, which causes infection in your lungs, are called as pulmonary TB, and other than the lungs part of the body, it's known as extrapulmonary TB. So tuberculosis becomes active. So these are the criteria for it. They are commonly involves lung. They involve pleura, that leads to pleurosis, central nervous system, that is meningitis in case of extrapulmonary, lymphatic system, in scapula of your neck, genitourinary system in case of urinogenital tuberculosis, bones and joints, even in pot disease of your spine. So they can affect your bones and spines also, joints also. Whereas the common symptoms in your pulmonary TB, as you see, is chest pain, prolonged coughing producing thick sputum, yellow sputum, and about 25% of your pulse do not have any symptom. Occasionally, people may show blood small amount of blood in their sputum. The infection may erode into your pulmonary artery or your Grossman's aneurysm, resulting in massive bleeding. This is rarely seen in this. So in case of extravascular, it spreads the bone. It's known as osteotuberculosis. Bursting of your tubercular abscess through the skin results in tuberculous ulcer. So in the skin, if they burst, they lead to your ulceration, and they are potentially most widespread form of your TB, and it is called as decimated TB, commonly known as miliary tuberculosis, because they can spread to different parts of your body from your blood, and that's why it is known as decimated TB, because from the origin they can spread to different part of the body through your blood and lymphatic system. So this is the signs and symptoms of your pulmonary and extrapulmonary TB. So what are the main sites of extrapulmonary? That is central nervous system. It causes meningitis. In case in lymphatic system, scapula near the neck, pleura, that is tubercular pleurosis, decimated tuberculosis, that is miliary tuberculosis, bones like bones and spine. It affects called Pott's disease. Urinary system, it gives you urinogenital tuberculosis. Whereas the main symptoms of your pulmonary tuberculosis is loss of appetite, fatigue. In lungs, it causes chest pain, coughing with blood, productive prolonged time, and in skin, it affects the skin by neck sweats and palpitation. So these are the some of the symptoms of your pulmonary tuberculosis. So now let's go for the classification of your antituberculosis. Let's go for the classification. So they can be classified according to the efficacy and toxicity. So they can be classified according to the efficacy and toxicity. So they can be classified as first line essential drug, first line supplementary drugs, or second line. So what are these first line essential drugs? Most effective and basic component of anti-tubercular drugs. So they are less toxic and efficacious. They are less toxic and efficacious. The examples are rifampicin, isoniazid, pyrazinamide, and ethanbutol. So RIPE. So in short form, you can present as RIPE. That is rifampicin, isoniazid, pyrazinamide, and ethanbutol. So these are the essential first drug treatment of your TB. Now supplementary drugs are rifabutin, rifampicin, and streptomycin. So they act as a secondary line in the treatment of your secondary line for the treatment of TB. So in case of first line, supplementary are quite effective and possesses an acceptable limit of toxicity, and they are reserved drug and used in special cases. So whenever there is a slight whenever it was observed that there is some resistance seen in the first line essential drug, so these particular drugs were introduced into the regime, dosage regime. So now comes the second line. So they are used if the first line, if there is a resistance to the first line drugs, or the first line drugs are contraindicated for some reason. So you cannot prescribe the first line drugs, or if there is any resistance, these second line drugs are given. These drugs are less effective and slightly more toxic as compared to that of your first line drugs, except your fluoroquinone. So what are the examples? How to remember? Fluoroquinolines, amikacin, capromycin, ethionamide, para-aminosalicylic acid, and cycloserine. So you can remember it as phase pack. You can remember it as phase pack, considering all the first letters of your compound. So fluoroquinoline, amikacin, capromycin, ethionamide, para-aminosalicylic, and cycloserine. So these are the examples of your second line therapy, and it is given by the short form phase pack. So by remembering this, you can remember the name of the drugs according for the treatment. So these are some of the examples, as I mentioned earlier, in the same first line and second line treatment. So where does the drug act? Where does the act? So in the present slide, we have shown the different layers of your present in your mycobacterium. So outer layer is containing of your mycolic acid. In between it contains and arabinogalactan peptidoglycan linkage, which connects your mycolic acid to your cell membrane, and inside it contains your DNA, RNA in the nucleus. Okay, so this, according to that, so if you see in the first slide, so the drugs might act on the cell wall synthesis, or it may interfere with your protein synthesis in your cytoplasm. So these are the various sites of action of the drug. So if we can see INH, isoniazid acts on your mycolic acid synthesis, ethionamide, ethyl butyl acts on your arabinogalactan, which is the cross linkage between your mycolic acid and your cell membrane, which maintains the integrity of the cell. Pyrazinamide interferes with your short chain fatty acid synthesis, which is necessary for your synthesis of your cell wall. Whereas rifampicin interferes with your DNA, RNA polymerase enzyme, which is necessary for your formation of your new proteins, which is necessary for your formation of your new. So this is the basic sites for action or mechanism of action of the most first line drugs. So most of the first line therapy drugs affect on either cell wall synthesis, or it affects your RNA, DNA or RNA polymerase, which is associated with your protein synthesis. So now let's go for the chemical classification. Chemical classification: salicylic acid derivative like para-amino, salicylic acid derivative, pyrimidine derivative like isoniazid, ethionamide, and propionamide. Pyrazine derivatives like pyrazinamide. Ethylene diamine butanol derivatives like ethambutol. Antibiotics like streptomycin, rifampicin, and kanamycin, amikacin can be used. Miscellaneous drugs like your fluoroquinol, ofloxacin, ciprofloxacin, macrolides like your clarithromycin, azithromycin, and even in your aminoglycosides like your amikacin can be used for the treatment. Okay, these are the basic classification according to the chemicals. Right. So now let's come for the first class, that is isoniazid, that is isonicotinic acid hydrazine, that is INH, that is INH. So nicotinic acid hydrazine was first synthesized in 1952. It's the first line synthetic antitubercular having bacteriostatic action. It is also known as isoniazid, INH, or isonicotinic acid hydrazine. Although it is effective when used alone, but combination of it with other drugs like rifampicin is preferred because of the fear of your resistance. So in order to prevent the occurrence of your resistance, these are always given in combination with your other drug, and also to avoid the higher dosage of your isoniazid, because higher dosage leads to your toxicity. The two things why we prefer combination therapies: to reduce the dose of a single drug, so that to prevent the toxicity, and also to prevent the resistance among the by tubercular pathogens. The structure is, it contains an pyridine with an carboxyl hydrazine derivative, that is CONHNH2. It contains an hydrazine derivative at the fourth position. It contains an hydrazine derivative at the fourth position, and it is also known as isonicotinic acid hydrazine derivative. Okay, so this is the structure of your isoniazid. So what is the mechanism of action? What is the mechanism of action of iron? Initially, there are a lot of speculations regarding the mechanism of action, but later on it was found that this isoniazid gets converted to its active form, that is your isonicotinic aldehyde, or isonicotinic acid, or isonicotinic amide, by an enzyme called catalase peroxidase. by the enzyme called catalase, which is catalyzed by endogenous enzyme CAT-G. The enzyme complex catalase peroxide is responsible for your oxidation in your bacillus, which is only present in your mycobacterium. So this particular enzyme, catalase peroxidase, which is present in your mycobacterium, they catalyze the conversion of your isoniazide to your corresponding isonicotinic aldehyde and isonicotinic acid and amide. And this inactive enzyme complex try to change the metabolism of your protein. So that tries to, so it will act as a false start and try to prevent the change in the metabolism of your proteins, nucleic acid and lipids in and carbon. Moreover, it was found that INH is highly selective for your mycobacteria. The other mechanism that it was found that it interferes with your mycolic acid, which is your major constituent of your mycobacterium cell wall. So it inhibits the synthesis of your mycolic acid, which is necessary, which is an important constitution of your mycobacterium cell wall. This causes the loss in some areas in the outer membrane and thinning of your cell wall. So what happens? Some of the layers of your cell wall gets removed, and this leads to thinning of your cell wall, and this leads to your structural disintegrity and cell death. So if you see what happens over here in the particular diagram, so this nicotinic acid, that is isonicotinic acid, they inhibit your mycolic acid synthesis. They inhibit your mycolic acid synthesis, which is the necessary component of your cell wall. Okay, which is a necessary constituent of your cell wall, and thus cause your disintegration of your mycobacterium cells. So this is how the isoniazid. Look, let's go for the acid. So let's see what all things are the basic criteria necessary for your isoniazid. So what does it say? Nitrogen 1 in the hydrogen side chain should always be unsubstituted. So if you see the nitrogen, first nitrogen should always be unsubstituted. The nitrogen 2 can be substituted with an alkyl group to get active compound. So the nitrogen at the second position can be substituted by any alkyl group. The replacement of pyridine nucleus with another aromatic such as benzene, piperidine, thiazole diminishes your antituberculin. So if you are trying to replace your pyridine with an benzene, piperidine, thiazole, isothiazole, the activity is no. When moreover it was that most active in all of the substituent was unsubstituted parenol. It shows superior activity as compared to your other substituted. When there was an isopropyl group substituted in R2, the resultant N2 isopropyl derivative is named as isopropanate. It is known as isopropanate, and this drug has antignose but also found to exhibit psychomotor stimulatory activity. It was found to exhibit psychomotor stimulatory activity. So this is the SCR for isoniazid. Now let us see the synthesis. So in exam they ask the synthesis. Synthesis is simple. You take 4-methyl pyridine. You take 4-methyl pyridine. You oxidize it with KMnO4 to get your isonicotinic acid. This isonicotinic acid you treat with anhydrous hydrazine, that is NH2NH2. So you get your corresponding isoniazid. So this is the synthesis of your isoniazid. So you take 4-methyl pyridine, oxidize it with using KMnO4. You get your isonicotinic acid that you treat with anhydrous hydrazine. Basically, you reflux in ethanol. So you get your isoniazid. So this is the synthesis of isoniazid. So now let's look out for the adverse. So there are various allergic reactions like fever, skin rashes. It causes hepatotoxicity. Severe hepatic injury occurs in patients above the age of and even in case of alcohol. So it causes liver damage in most of the cases. Isoniazid is also if symptoms of hepatitis is developed or if the amino transfer activity increases to more than 3 times the normal. So even if the activity of the enzyme amino transferase is increased 3 or more times than the normal level, even then your isoniazid should be discontinued. Okay. The next is peripheral or CNS toxicity. It can cause toxicity of peripheral nerve as well as your CNS. So toxicity results in decreased excretion of pyridoxine. In this toxicity probably results from your increased excretion of your pyridoxine induced by isoniazid. So what happens whenever you are trying to take isoniazid, there is increased excretion of your pyridoxine, which produces a pyridoxine deficiency. So that's the reason whenever you're trying to give isoniazid, always it is better to give pyridoxine administered along with the chemotherapy. Other side effects are peripheral neuritis, urinary retention, insomnia, and psychotic episodes. Means there will be a change in your mental behavior whenever you're taking isoniazid. Now let's come to the second topic, that is ethambutol. That is ethambutol. So it is ethylene diamine, no butanol. So ethylene diamine. So it is CH2 in the center with NH atom at the terminal. This NH at the terminal is connected to an 1-butanol. It is connected to an 1-butanol at both the ends. So this is the structure of your ethambutol. This is the structure of your ethambutol, and it is abbreviated as EMB. It is abbreviated as EMB. So if you see, the carbon is as a stereoisomer. So if you see, it shows the D enantiomer, that is dextroenantiomer, is more almost 200 to 5 more potent than your meso enantiomer. So it's more potent than your meso enantiomer. Levo is pharmacological inert. So only your dextro form of your ethambutol is active. Meso comes then your meso. Meso means there is no optical activity. Okay, they are exactly mirror image. There is a mirror image. Okay, and the levoisomer is pharmacologically inert. So it contains an aliphatic diamine and a 2-butanol moiety in this. So this is the structure. SAR, it's nothing between the presence of 2 amino group is essential. Presence of small branch alkyl group on the nitrogen also influence the active. So if you see a branched alcohol group, small alcohol group has influence in the activity. When the amino moiety is replaced by an acetyl sulfonyl or nitrosyl moiety, if the NH is replaced by all these groups, the activity is lost. And when the hydroatom like oxygen sulfur group were substituted in your ethylene moiety, even similarly as I said, if you introduce your oxygen or sulfur instead of your nitrogen, the activity is lost. When the hydroxyl group is replaced, when your hydroxyl group of your butanol is replaced by your methoxy or ethoxy, equipotent compound was achieved as compared to that of your parent OH. And replacement of the group with the benzoyl or thiomethyl or NH results in inactive. So if you remove the OH with a benzyl group or a thiomethyl group or NH2, that is hydrogen group, the activity compound becomes inactive. So this is the basic SAR of your ethambutol. So let's see the mechanism of action. Where does this drug act? So if you see the diagram, if you see the picture, this ethambutol, they inhibit the polymerization of your arabinoglycans of your cell wall by inhibiting arabinotransferase. So this arabinoglycan, this forms a polymer linkage between your mycolic acid and your peptidoglycan. So if this arabinoglycan is not present, this will destroy the cell integrity of your cell wall and also destroys your cell wall of your mycobacter. So let us see the elaborate. So ethyl butyl is bacteriostatic in nature. Uh, it works by obstructing the formation of your cell wall. As you see, if your arabinoglycan is not present, your cell wall cannot be formed. Your cell wall cannot be formed. So if you see the outermost layer, that mycolic acid is attached to a 5-hydroxyl group of your D-arabinose residue, that is your arabinoglycan. So your mycolic acid is attached by an 5-hydroxy-arabinose residue of arabinoglycan to form an mycolyl arabinogalactin peptidoglycan complex. If you see, there is a complex between the 3 layers of your cell wall. So this particular drug disrupts the arabinogalactin synthesis. So this drug will inhibit your synthesis of your arabinogalactin by inhibiting the enzyme arabinosyl transferase. So this particular drug will inhibit your enzyme arabinosyl transferase, which is necessary for formation of your cross linkage between polymerization between your mycolic acid and your peptidoglycan. This results in disruption of your arabinogalactin synthesis and thus inhibits the formation of this complex and leads to increased permeability of the cell. So the protective layer of the cell membrane is lost. So it will increase your permeability of your cell wall and thus destroys the structural integrity, and it is more prone to attack by the internal defense system. So this is your mechanism of action of your ethyl butol. This is your mechanism of action of your ethyl butol. So some of the adverse effect or toxic effects are it causes optic neuritis, result in decreased vision, loss in ability to differentiate between your red and color, that is color blindness, nausea, anorexia, rashes, fever, and hyperuricemia. Therapeutic use, it is used for the treatment of pulmonary and extrapulmonary use. It is used in prophylactic treatment of your TB. It is also given in combination along with isoniazid, pyrazinamide, and rifampicin for initial phase therapy. So it acts as a first line therapy. So in case of initial phase therapy, this drug is synthesis. You take 1,2-dichloroethane, you treat it with 2-amino-butanol. You heat it, there is a condensation product to give you a corresponding ethyl. So next drug is rifampicin or rifampicin. Okay, so it's a macrolide. So what is a macrolide? What is basically a macrolide? It's a huge cyclic structure. It's a huge cyclic structure containing an cyclic ester linkage. So this rifampicin are the group of macrocyclic antibiotics which were produced from Streptomyces mediterranae. So it was obtained from Streptomyces mediterranae. So rifampicin, what is the mechanism? They act on the enzyme RNA polymerase and prevent the RNA synthesis, and thus will prevent your protein synthesis. This is your mechanism. So they were useful in treating tuberculosis, leprosy, Mycobacterium avium complex, that is MAC infection, and Staphylococcus. So they had got a wide variety. It was a broad spectrum antibiotic. So when it was isolated, they had 7 forms, but the rifampicin B was said to be activated. So, and rifampicin, this and the B form was active. And rifampicin is a semisynthetic analog of your rifamycin. It is a semisynthetic analog of rifamycin. So, what is the structure? So, if you see a structure, it contains basically an. So, just show you how to draw the structure of your rifampicin. structure of rifampicin, and it is asked in exam. It's asked in your exam. So, structure of rifampicin. So, first thing that you have to draw is an naphthalene ring. Yeah. So it's almost a 30 carbon macrocyclic ring. So it's a 30 carbon macrocyclic ring. Okay. So let's do the numbering. Let's do the numbering. Numbering is that in April. Let's do the numbering. Okay, you see the structure over here. Let's do the numbering. So they're given 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So this is your basic numbering of a naphthalene. So OH is at the first and fourth. Okay, it is at the 8th. 1, 4, 8. Okay, there are 3 OH in the ring. Now it has got a methyl at the 7th position. It has got a methyl at the 7th position. Okay, so 5th and 6th carbon forms a lactone. It forms a lactone. Okay, 5th and 6th. It is connected to an carbonyl and an O. Okay, and at the point of attachment with the rest of the ring, it contains a. So this is the. So 1 and 4 and 8 contains OH, 7 contains and methyl, 5th and 6th contains and cyclic ester, which is connected to your carbonyl, and 6th is connected. So now let's go for the third. The third position in case of rifampicin. In case of rifampicin contains an Schiff base, and methyl amino piperazine forms an Schiff base. Okay, so this is your third position. So it contains a CH double bond N, piperazine and methyl. So it contains an Schiff base at the third position. Now the second position is connected to the rest of ring by an amide moiety. So it is connected to the rest of the ring by an amide moiety. If you see, it contains an amide moiety. It contains an amide moiety. So this second position is connected to the rest of the ring by amide moiety. Now this is connected to the rest of the ring by an conjugated dye. It is connected to a conjugated dye, and at the point of attachment, it contains a methyl with an amide. So at the point of attachment with your amide, it contains a methyl group which is connected to an conjugated dimes. The thing that you see in the red is a conjugated dye. Okay, now see over here. So this conjugated dye is connected to a methyl. So you see one hill, just name it as a hill, which contains at the top methyl, and methyl is at the next carbon, it contains an. Now again draw another hill containing a methyl and an OH. You see the structure? Yes. Now again, it is connected to an methyl. You can see the structure properly. Methyl, and the next carbon is connected to an O acetate. C double bond O CH3. It is connected to an O acetate. So I'll be giving the number so that you can remember at what position what is there. So it is connected to an O acetate. Okay. Again, there is an OH, and next there is an O methoxy. There is an O methoxy. There is an O methoxy. Okay. This O methoxy, then it is connected to an vinylic group. It is connected to an vinylic group, and this is connected to your cyclic ester group by an oxygen, and the point of attachment, it contains an methyl. So this is the structure of your rifampicin. This is your structure of your rifampicin. Now let's do the numbering of the compound. So it was 10, 11. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 11 is over here. 12, 13. So this entire ring you are getting. Now over here, 14th is your amino group. 14th is your amino group. 15th carbonyl, and 16, 17, 18. So this 16, 17, 18 will form a conjugated ion with the methyl at the 16th position. Now 20th position, 22nd position, 22nd position, 24th position. They contain a methyl group. They contain, sorry, there is a methyl over here. And your 26th. So alternative, if you see, there is an methyl on this. Okay. And at the 21st, 23rd position, there is a hydroxy. And at the 25th position, there is an O acetoxy. And at the 27th position, there is an O methoxy. And at the 28th and 29th position, there is a double bond. And the 30th position contains an oxygen. Contains an oxygen. So this is the structure of your rifampicin. This is the structure of your rifampicin. So what does it contain? Basic, it contains a naphthalene ring which contains an OH at 1, 2, 4 and 8, methyl at the 7th position. 5th and 6th forms a 5-membered ring containing an oxygen and a carbonyl group. So this is your 12-membered carbon naphthalene fused ring. Then at the 3rd position, it forms a skiff base between your aldehyde and an amino and methyl pipaz. So this is your N-methyl amino pipaz. So it forms a skiff base. Now the 2nd position is connected to the rest of the molecule by an amide, that is an NH, double bond, which is connected to the rest of the molecule by an conjugated diene, which is connected to the rest of the molecule by a conjugated, which contains an methyl group at the. So once the position, that is 19th position, where the conjugated diene attached, the next will contain a methyl followed by an oxygen hydroxyl group, methyl followed by a hydroxyl group. So alternate methyl hydroxyl, and the 3rd contains an alternate contains a methyl and an acetate, which is followed by a methyl and an methoxy group, which is then followed by an vinylic group, which is connected to the rest of the molecule by an oxygen moiety. So this is the structure of your rifampicin. This is the structure of your rifampicin. This is the structure of rifampicin. Very important to be remembered. Very important to be remembered. Okay. So this is the structure of rifampicin as I've shown it over here. Now let's go for the mechanism of action. So the rifampicin or rifampin. It is bactericidal in at 0.005 or 2.02 microgram per ml versus against the Mycobacterium tuberculosis. So rifampicin inhibits your gram-positive bacteria and works by binding non-covalently to your DNA-dependent RNA polymerase, that is DDR, DNA-dependent RNA polymer, and inhibiting the start of your RNA synthesis. So they will block the RNA synthesis. So this DNA-dependent RNA in eukaryotic cells are NFS, since the drug binds to a peptide chain not present in your mammalian RNA polymerase. So they will only bind to the peptide chain which is present, which is very specific for your which is present in your Mycobacterium tuberculosis species. Therefore, they are highly selective. It acts by inhibiting your DNA-dependent RNA polymerases of your and other micro by binding strongly to their beta subunits. According to your beta subunit, this alpha and beta, they are the various forms of your DNA strand. So whenever we studying about the DNA structures, so these are the beta subunits which are present in your DNA. Or so this is the mechanism. So they act by inhibiting your DNA-dependent RNA polymerase enzymes, thus inhibiting your RNA synthesis and thus prevent your protein synthesis. Okay. So SAR, as I said, so if you see the structure of this, so it's a flat naphthalene. So basically it contains a naphthalene ring with several OH groups. So there are several OH groups which are essential for the activity. They act in zwitterion form because it has got both your amino as well as acidic moiety in the. They're both soluble in lipid as well as aqueous. This is the reason why, because of the macrocyclic ring, they are more non-lipophilic in nature, and because of the presence of your amino groups, they are water soluble. So there is a balance between the property. So what are the things that are required for the criteria? So the intact macrocyclic molecule is essential for. So your entire molecule should be a macrocyclic. It should be a cyclic. Macrocyclic ring. The double bond in the macrocyclic ring should not be reduced. So if you see the double bond that is between 28 and 29, it should not be reduced. Or opening of your macrocyclic results in the compound with decreased activity. So if the macrocyclic ring is opened or the double bond is reduced, then the activity is lost. The free hydroxyl group should be present at C1, 8, 21, 24, C4, or should lie in the same plane. They should all lie. The C1, C8. If you see C1, C8, C21, and C24. If you see so they should lie in the same plane for the better attachment to the DNA-dependent RNA polymerase. So the alignment of the OH should be such that all this OH at this position 1, 8 and 21 and 23, all the things should lie in the same plane so that they can bind to the that is DNA dependent RNA. The OH at 21 and 23, the OH at the 21 and 23 are completely removed or substituted. If they are OH at the, so if you try to convert it to any other form, so if you try to convert your OH to any other substituent, this will lose. There is a loss of activity. There will be a loss of activity. Okay. The maintenance of drug activity relies on the presence of either OH or the carbonyl group, both of which should be unsubstituted. So in case of rifampicin, it contains an 4-methyl-1-piperazinoamidine methyl group at the third position, as in case of your rifampicin B, and it's antibacterial antibiotic of your rifampicin group. So this is Rifampicin is an example of the antibiotics of the family rifamycin. Okay, so this is the SAR of your rifampicin. This is your SAR of your rifampicin. So clinical uses, it is used in combination of other drugs in treatment of your tuberculosis. Okay, and mostly to prevent drug resistant. It is also used for the treatment of leprosy. Another infection, rifampicin can also be used in variety of gram-positive coccal infections, especially in the serious cases that cannot be effectively treated by other drug. It can be also used for prophylaxis for meningitis caused by highly penicillin resistant strains of pneumococci. So it is also used for the treatment of meningitis. Adverse effect, urine and sweat and tears and contact may take orange color because of rifampicin. Okay, administration. This is harmless. So you can see orange coloration in your sweat, urine and all. So this is because the color of rifampicin. Light chain proteinuria and impaired antibody response as some may occur. Rifampicin induce hepatic microsomal enzymes. Therefore, they can affect the half-life. So they will increase the activity of your hepatic microsomal enzyme. So this will reduce the half-life of more because of the increased activity of this particular enzyme. So even they cause flu like that, febrile convulsions. So convulsions also can be uh, associated with your rifampicin treatment. So what is the resistance? So mechanism of resistance of rifampicin. This is also, let us see what happens. Resistance can occur due to mutation in RIPO-B gene. Due to the mutation in the RIPO-B gene, which prevents the binding of the rifampicin to your RNA polymerase. So if the gene which is responsible for your binding, if the gene which is responsible for your binding of rifampicin to your RNA polymerase is mutated, so this will prevent your binding of your rifampicin to your RNA. Hence, the resistance is developed. Okay, pharmacokinetic, it is well absorbed. After oral administration, it penetrates all tissues, tubercular cavities, since it has to enter macrophages, so it has got a better penetration. It can pass to the placenta, CSF, and so that's why it can be used in the treatment of meningitis. It is also protein. So this is the pharmacokinetics. So next drug is your streptomycin. Next drug is your streptomycin. It is an example of an aminoglycoside. It's an example of an aminoglycoside, and it is obtained from your strain Streptomyces griseus. It is obtained from your strain Streptomycin griseus. So mechanism of action, they irreversibly inhibit bacterial protein synthesis. The protein synthesis is inhibited by three ways. They interfere with the initiation complex for the peptide formation, misreading of your mRNA, which causes incorporation of incorrect amino acids into your, so wrong coding for your mRNA, which leads to synthesis of wrong protein, resulting in non-functional or toxic protein and breakup of your polysomes into non-functional monosomes. So there will be a breaking of your polysomes into your non-functional monosomes. These monosomes are of no use for the body because they cannot be useful in preparation of any proteins. So this is how your streptomycin acts. So these are only given to the patient when the first line drugs are not showing or showing some resistance. They can cause the pharmacokinetic is that they penetrate into cell poorly and ineffective for intracellular tubercular bacillus. So there are some limitations of this streptomycin, but they cross the blood-brain barrier. That's why they are used in treatment of meningitis associated with your inflammation. So they are used for the treatment of meningitis, which is associated with your inflammation in your brain. So this is streptomycin, and I've explained the structure of streptomycin when I was teaching. aminoglycosides. So you can refer that video in that case. Side effects of streptomycin, that is ototoxicity, vertigo, at a hearing loss, nephrotoxicity, electrolyte abnormality, fever, rash, hypersensitivity relation, and anaphylaxia. So these are the side effects of your streptomycin. So next drug is pyrazinamide. Next drug is pyrazinamide. It is an pyrazine. What is pyrazine? It is 1,4-diazine. It is an example of 1,4-diazine. It is an example of 1,4-diazine in which the two carbons at the of the benzene ring at 1,4 position is replaced by your nitrogen. That is known as pyrazine, and it contains an amidic group at the third position. It contains an amidic group at the third position. It is a pyrazine derivative of your nicotinamide. Okay, because of its hepatotoxicity, because of its hepatotoxicity, it was earlier discontinued. Its use was discontinued, but later on it was used as an antitubercular because in the reduced doses in combination with other drug, it emerged as the third most important drug. So they were found to be most effective in case of your combination with the reduced dose in combination with other drug. Okay, it is bactericidal to the Mycobacterium tuberculosis, and it is most important thing, it is active only at low pH only. This is one of the most important. They are active only at the low acidic pH, and it is highly effective only on intracellular Mycobacterium species. So it is highly effective in intracellular. So whereas in other cases, in case of streptomycin, it is not getting goes into your intracellular space. Whereas in case of pyrazinamide, it can pass into your intracellular Mycobacterium due to the acidic environment in the intracellular space of your macrophage. Because of this, they can penetrate and effective in your intracellular Mycobacterium. Its introduction is basically introduced in early treatment, and due to this it has reduced the risk of relapse or in the infection. So it will prevent the relapse of the infection because you have better penetration into your intracellular of your macrophages, and that's why it is used as this is why it is used for its sterilizing effect by killing the intracellular. It also helps in reducing the duration of the treatment. It also helps in reducing the duration of the treatment. Now let's go for the mechanism of action. This pyrazinamide, it's not active on its own. So it acts as an prodrug. It acts as an prodrug. So it enters into your Mycobacterium through your passive diffusion. So it enters your Mycobacteriums through the passive diffusion. So once it enters into your Mycobacterium cells, it gets converted into its active metabolite, that is pyrazonic acid. So your amide gets converted to an acid by an enzyme called pyrazimidase, which is encoded by a gene called PNCA. Okay, PNCA. So this particular enzyme, pyrazinamidase, which is used for conversion of your pyrazinamide to your pyrazoic acid, which is the particular gene, that is PNCA, and which codes for this particular, are responsible for your conversion of your pyrazinamide to your pyrazinoic acid. And this metabolite gets accumulated in your acidic media only, and this occurs only in your acidic media and probably inhibits your mycolic acid synthesis. And this metabolite which is formed, this will inhibit your mycolic acid synthesis, and by interacting with your fatty acid synthesis. So they inhibit your fatty acid synthesis, which is necessary for one of the most important part of your phospholipid layer. Okay, and they also disturb the mycobacterial cell and its transport system. It also inhibits your, it disturbs your cell membrane and its transport. So if you see, because of this acidic thing medium, this will destroy the cell membrane and also the transport functions of your cell. So this is how your pyrazinamide. So side effects of this pyrazinamide is hepatotoxicity, hyperuricemia, gout-like gout-like arthralgia, and other side effects are skin rashes, vomiting, anemia, lupus, seizures, and photodermatitis, that is formation of patches in your skin. So these are the side effects of your pyrazine. Now next class of drug is ethionamide. So if you see the structure of your ethionamide, it is similar to that of your isoniazid. It is similar to that of your isoniazid. It is an thioamide derivative of your isoniazid with an ethyl substitution at the second position. It is nothing but an thioamide derivative of an isoniazid with an ethyl substitution at the second position. It is orally effective, but it's always given as an anticoagulant to prevent mucosal irritation. So they are always given as an entry-coated form to prevent irritation to your mucosal layer. It is distributed well in all tissues, including your cells. So it has got a good distribution, pharmacokinetic properties. It is always used in combination with other in case of treatment to pulmonary TB, which is resistant to isoniazid. So it is a second-line therapy which is given in the treatment of your pulmonary treatment when the drugs are resistant to your isoniazid. When the drugs are resistant to isoniazid. So mechanism of action, they interfere with your peptide synthesis by acting as an antimetabolite and inhibiting the incorporation of your sulfur containing amino acids. So they act as an antimetabolite and inhibiting the incorporation of your sulfur containing amino acids. So any methionine, cysteine, such type of amino acids introduction can be inhibited by this particular drug, ethionamide, because it contains sulfur. It may also inhibit mycolic acid synthesis in your mycobacterium. It may form a substituted isonicotinic derivative that may interfere with the NADH dependent system. So wherever your oxidative system is, so instead of your NAD, this particular system gets in and thus it inhibit your energy process also. Adverse effects are nausea, anorexia, diarrhea, headache, skin rashes, blurred vision, and drowsiness. And others are impotency and olfactory disturbance, that is deafness. These are the adverse effect of your ethionamide. The structure is similar to that of your isoniazid. Instead of your hydrazide, it contains an thioamide linkage with an ethyl substitution at the second position. Next drug in your second line treatment is your para-amino salicylic acid. Para-amino salicylic. So what is para-amino salicylic? You have to just draw salicylic acid. That is COH and OH at the ortho position. And para-amino salicylic is nothing but your amino group which is at the para position to your carboxylic acid. So that is known as para-amino salicylic acid. These are usually present at sodium, potassium and calcium salt to increase its water solubility and reduce your gastric irritation. So these drugs basically act as an antimetabolite by interfering with incorporation of your PABA into folic acid synthesis by blocking the enzyme dihydroxyapatite synthetase, the first step in your folic acid synthesis. So they act as an anti-metabolite. Moreover, these drugs inhibit the metabolism of your isoniazid. So they will prevent the metabolism of your isoniazid by competing with hepatic enzyme, thus elevating its level. So whenever you're giving a combination of your isoniazid and your para-aminosalicylate, this particular drug reduces the metabolism of your isoniazid. Okay, so this thing has to be taken into consideration whenever you are giving a combination of your para-aminosalicylic acid and your isoniazid. Adverse effects are gastric irritation, hemolytic anemia, abdominal cramps, distress, leukopenia, eosinophil, and crystalluria formation. So these are the side effects of your para-aminosalicylic acid. Now comes your synthesis of your para-amino. The structure and synthesis is many times asked in the exam. So please read this properly. So starting material is your 2-amino benzoic acid. That is nothing but your anthranylic acid. You treat it with your, it undergoes nitration to give you a nitro derivative. It is 2-amino-4 nitro, it undergoes nitration. This is followed by this nitro derivative. It undergoes diazotization using NaNO2. You get a diazonium salt. This diazonium salt, when you heat it with water, it forms your OH and you get a para-nitrosalicylic. And the final step is reduction using your ion HCl method. Using your ion HCl or tin HCl, you can convert your nitro into your amino group. So this is your method for synthesis of your para-aminosalicylic acid, which is asked in exam for 2 marks. Write the structure and synthesis of para-aminosalicylic acid. Okay, the first step is your nitration of your 2-amino benzoic acid, that is nothing but your anthranylic acid, followed to form your 2-amino-4 nitrobenzoic acid, then diazotization, that is NaNO2 and HCl at 0 to 5 degrees Celsius to give you a diazo compound. This is followed by conversion of your heating of the diazo compound in water. You will get your diazo compound is replaced by your OH. You get an salicylic acid, para-nitrosalicylic acid, and the final step is your reduction to give you your para-aminosalicylic. This is the synthesis of your para-aminosalicylic. Very important from your examination point of view. Structure and synthesis are frequently asked. Either in a 10-mark question, they will write the structure and uses of the following compound, or as a synthesis. So please look into the structure of your para-aminosalicylic whenever you study. The next class of drug is your cycloserine. Next class of your drug is your cycloserine. It is an antibiotic which is obtained from Streptomyces orchidaceus. It is an antibiotic which is obtained from Streptomyces orchidaceus. Okay, so it is nothing but an 4-amino isoxyl. So it is a 5-membered ring containing an isoxazole ring. It is a 5-membered heterocyclic ring containing an saturated isoxazole ring with an amino at the 4th position and a carbonyl at the 3rd. So 1 position, oxygen 2nd position, nitrogen 3rd position, carbonyl and 4th position amino. So this is the structure of your cycloserine. This is the structure of your cycloserine. It is a tuberostatic. It is a static. Tuberostatic agent. So means it will prevent the division of your mycobacterium organism. So how does this mechanism of action? So inhibits the incorporation. So it is basically used in prevention of your cell wall. So it interferes with your cell wall synthesis. So what happens in your normal cell wall? It inhibits your incorporation of the D-alanine into your peptidoglycan pentapeptide by inhibiting your alanine racemase. So what does this alanine racemase does? It converts your naturally occurring alanine to your D-alanine. Okay, it racemizes your L-alanine into your D-alanine. And next thing, it also inhibits their enzyme D-alanine ligase. D-alanine ligase, which further inhibits your mycobacterium cell wall synthesis. So this cycloserine acts as 2 enzymes and thus prevents your cell wall synthesis in your tubercle. So these are basically used when the Mycobacterium tuberculosis resistant to the first line. So cycloserine is used as a second line treatment when the Mycobacterium shows resistance to the first line or first line. So cycloserine is used for the treatment when it shows first. The structure is 5-membered ring containing oxygen, nitrogen, carbonyl and amino at 1, 2, 3, 4. A 5-member heterocyclic. Side effects: psychiatric disturbance include chronic headache, dizziness, nightmares, depression, all related to your sinus. Hearing impairment also causes rashes, peripheral nerve, that is burning and tingling sensation in your hand and the feet. So if you can see something like ants moving in your palm or your leg. So this is your some of the side effects: jaundice, yellowness of your eyes and skin, and vision distress. So these are the side effects of your cycloserine. Next class of drug is capromycin and bleomycin. So it's a very simple structure. So basically, if you see, they contain 5-amidic linkage with a methylene linker between the two. So it contains, if you see the structure, it contains 5-amidic linkage. It contains 5-amidic linkage. It contains 5-amidic linkage which is joined by an methylene group. So let us see the first carbonamide, first amide, then a methylene group connected to your second amide, yeah, and a methylene group, another amide. You can see, look at the amide, first amide, second amide, third amide. Okay, third. Now again, it is connected to a methylene group, which is connected again to a fourth amide, which is again connected by an, which is again connected by an methylene group to another amide, fourth and fifth, and again this is connected to your first, okay, by a methylene. So this is your basic structure. Now this is 1 amide, 2 amide, 3 amide, 4 amide, and 5th. Now let us see what are the methylene group attached to your carbon. Which all groups are attached to your methylenic carbon? So in case of first amide, next to it, it is connected to an, it is basically connected to an OH. Okay, just remember it. It connected to an OH. Now the second methylene group is connected to an amino group. It is connected to an amino group. Okay, just remember 1A structure. Okay, it is connected to an amino group. Third one over here, it is connected to an vinylic urea. So this is an vinyl group which is attached to an urea. So this is an vinyl group which is attached to an urea. That is your. Now we are fourth one. Fourth methylenic group. Okay, which is connected to an. If you see, it is connected to an cyclic it is connected to a cyclic guanidine. Why it is connected to a cyclic guanidine? So this NH double bond NH, this type of linkage is known as guanine linkage, and since it is cyclic, it is called cyclic guanidine linkage. Next, and the fifth one, there is just a minute. Just a minute. I'm receiving call from. Just a minute. So I'll again. So the structures of capromycin and neomycin. So it will, the fifth one, at the point of junction, it will contain an NH2. So this is the structure of your capromycin. Now let's go for the structure of vinomycin. Vinomycin, it is an hydroxylated cyclic bond. That is one difference over here. Next thing, your amino group is connected to an, the side chain amino, it is connected to an NH2. 1, 2, 3. That is 1,4-diamino. See, that is 1, 2, 3, 4 diamino. So if you consider this thing, you see double bond. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it is 3, 6 diamino hexanoic acid. So it contains a 3,6-diamino hexanoic acid, which is connected to your amine, that is your capromycin. So this is the structure of your vinomycin and capromycin. This is the structure of vinomycin and capromycin. This is the structure of vinomycin and capromycin. So let us see the mechanism of action. Both of these act by binding to the 30S or 50S subunits of your ribosomes, resulting in inhibition of your protein synthesis. This resulting in inhibition of your protein synthesis. So both of them have got structural similar, so they got similar mechanism of action. Only thing, capromycin is obtained from your streptomyces capromycin, and neomycin is obtained from Streptomycin pyomecis. Okay, this is the structural, this is the source of your neomycin and capromycin. And out of the various polypeptides present in your cyclic polypeptide chains present in your capromycin, only your structure 1A and 1B are effective, are active drug. And moreover, capromycin is found to be more potent and less toxic compared to that of your neomycin. Adverse effects are skin rashes, nephrotoxicity, ototoxicity, fever, and severe pain at the site of infection. So these are some of the side effects. So some other classes of drugs that are used are fluoroquinolone. They are specially used in case of multiple drug resistant strains. They are used in case of MDR tuberculosis. They are very effective when used in combined with regime of your HIV patient. So whenever an HIV patient acquires tuberculosis, these fluoroquinolines are given. So some of the examples of fluoroquinolines are ciprofloxacin, ofloxacin, levofloxacin, and moxifloxacin. They are used on the treatment of various strains of tuberculosis, including MAC and Mycobacterium fortium. So these are the fluoroquines which are used. They kill the intracellular because of their good penetration. Because of their better penetration, they can kill the intracellular pathogen. They can be substituted in drug combination if the first line of drug is contraindicated. So whenever the first line of drug, if they show any contraindication, they can be introduced into your chemotherapy. Next example is your amikacin. It is an aminoglycoside. It is a second choice after streptomycin and capromycin for the treatment of multiple drug resistant tuberculosis. Okay. So this is decimated. As I said, it is an infection caused by microbe which can spread from your lungs to other part of your body. That is known as decimated tuberculosis. So now let's talk. So these were the drugs which are used in the treatment of your tuberculosis. These are the drugs which are used in the treatment of. Now, why this resistance? The biggest problem in tuberculosis treatment is the drug resistance. The biggest problem in treatment of your tuberculosis is the drug resistance. There is a primary drug resistance which is caused due to exposure to your resistant organism. So this is inbuilt. So the microorganism is resistant to that particular antibiotic or the antitubercular. This is the primary source. Now, what is the secondary drug resistance? This is after initial drug sensitivity, because drug shows sensitivity to that particular microorganism, or due to non-compliance, due to the non-compliance of the patient. So these are the causes of your drug resistance. So in order to counter that, there is something called direct observer therapy to improve your compliance. They worked on this DOTS therapy, and the next is hospital stay. The patients who are not cooperative in taking of the medicines regularly, they were advised to go for hospital stay for the comprehensive treatment, for a comprehensive treatment. So this is drug, and this is one of the major concerns in the treatment of your tuberculosis. It is the major concern for the treatment of your tuberculosis. Now let's look deep into this thing. So what are the drug resistance TB? It is drug resistance in TB is a disease caused by microbial strain resistant to one or more of your anti-TB drugs. So what is this drug resistance? It is caused due to disease caused by Mycobacterium tuberculosis strain that is resistant to one or more type of anti-TB. So there are different classes. Monoresistance means they are resistant to single class. This particular Mycobacterium species is tuberculosis species is resistant to single drug. Polyresistance means that it is resistant to more than one drug, but combination of isoniazid, but not to the combination of your rifampicin and isoniazid. Very important to be understood. Resistant to more than one drug, but not resistant to the combination of your isoniazid and rifampicin. Next is multiple drug resistant tuberculosis, one of the major cause of our cancer. This is defined as a resistance of rifampicin and isoniazid. So these compounds are in this case the Mycobacterium tuber is resistant to the combination of a rifampicin and isoniazid, with or without the resistance to other first line anti-TB. So in case of multiple MDR TB, they are only resistant to rifampicin and isoniazid, with or without resistance to other first line. Next class of drug is XDR TB, most dangerous. So these are defined resistant to rifampicin and any fluoroquinone, and resistant to one or more types of injectable anti-TB like amikacin. So these are multi-resistant drug. These are multi-resistant drug. So in case of MDR, only to resistant to rifampicin and isoniazid, whereas in this case they are multi. And this the treatment for this drug, this type of resistance is not still discovered. They are trying to work on that. Okay, please remember this thing. These are the various type of resistance which are observed in Mycobacterium tuberculosis species to the particular class of anti-TB drugs. So they can be also classified according to the previous treatment. How they are. So first class is resistance in new patient, previously called as primary resistance. So this is what is the resistance? Why it is caused? It is resistance in the cultures from the patient with no history of previous treatment. So such type of resistance is seen in the patient with no history of previous TB treatment, and the patients who have received TB patient for less than 1 month previously. Very important to be know. So what is the classification? So they have no history of previous, or they have just taken the treatment for just 1 month and they are showing resistance. Second resistance is resistance in previously treated patients. In previously treated patient, or previously known as acquired resistance. This refers to resistance in culture from patients with one or more previous TB treatment episodes. So initially they have treatment, but they have got the resistance, or they have taken more than 1 month anti-TB therapy. Such type of resistance is known as resistance in previously treated patients. These are the resistance according to the history of the TB treatment. So this is the classification of resistance occurred in your TB. Very important in your examination. So it was asked in the exam. So this has been included. So what is the mechanism? As I have explained in my previous when I was when we were learning antibiotics. So resistance mechanism of resistance, drug resistance, may through following four reasons. Cell wall. The cell wall of your micro consists of complex lipid, as you see, mycolic acid, arabinogalactane, and a peptidoglycan linkage. So this acts as a barrier to the drug. This is acts as a barrier to the drug. Drug modifying or inactivating enzyme. So there will be some enzymes like phosphate which will inactivate the compound. So thus makes it resistant to the. Thus it makes mycobacterium. So mycobacterium will synthesize some uh, enzymes which will like phosphorylate, acylate, the OH sites, any sites which are prone to your inactivation by this enzyme. So these are the enzymes which are present in your micro, which will phosphorylate or adenylate or acetylate the compound, make it inactive. Next example of the drug resistance is drug efflux. So in the membrane, so there will be such mechanism that these compounds, when they try to enter the drugs, when they try, there is a mechanism through which they will throw out the drug through an active efflux mechanism. Through an active efflux mechanism. The last cause is mutation, which is the most dangerous. That is spontaneous mutation in your Mycobacterium tuberculosis genome can give rise to proteins that make bacterium drug resistant depending upon the drug. So this is the most important. So there will be some modification in your genes, mutation in the genes, which will lead to give rise to proteins which are resistant to the drug. So these are some of the examples of your sites drugs and where the mutation occurs. So in case of isoniazid, the mutation or deletion of CATG gene. So there is a mutation of your CATG gene or mutation of Cas gene, which is responsible for the activity of your catalase enzyme, which is necessary for your catalase, which codes for your catalase. So that modification in that gene is, so your modified enzyme will be prepared and that will have no affinity for your isoniazid. Rifampicin, there is a mutation in at codon 526 and 531 site of RIPO-B gene. So this is the gene. So there will be a mutation at the 526 and 531 site of your RIPO gene. So there is a protein in a gene. So that 536 and 531 and 526 portion of that codon will be mutated. Or there is a mutation in DNA repair genes like MUT and UGT, which are responsible for your resistance. In case of pyrazinamide, point mutation in, as I said, pyrazinamidase enzyme. So the gene encoding that particular amino, there is a mutation. So this leads to your, so what happens if your pyrazinamide is not getting converted into your acid corresponding, then there is no activity. This is how the mutation affects your resistance. Ethan butyl mainly mutation at 300 codon of 306 of MB gene, that is responsible for your enzyme arabinosyl transferase. So there is a mutation in this gene. Or also CATG315. So there is a coexistence between co-occurrence of ethan butyl and isoniazid resistant. Similarly, in case of your streptomycin, so in all these sites, there are specific genes which code for your specific enzymes. This will be blocked, this will be modified, and thus in modifying your interaction with your drug. In case of para-aminosalate, there is mutation of your thymidine synthetase gene, that is thymine A gene. And in case of ethionamide, there is a mutation in ETA-R gene, that is your transcription repressor gene, and mutation of INHA gene, which is leads to your co-resistance with your NA. So these are the various sites where the mutation occurs in the gene, which is responsible for your particular enzyme and thus reduces the affinity of the drug to the particular enzyme and thus generate your resistance. So these are the some of the mutations which leads to the resistance in the mycobacterium. So now let's see for the treatment. So to treat this resistance, so WHO recommended the DOTS therapy. The mainly resistance occur due to your poor compliance. So what happens when the patient feels that there is some release from the symptomatic relief from the complications, so they try to back off from the treatment, so there is an abrupt stop, so this leads to your resistance, so because of poor compliance. So WHO recommended this DOTS therapy. What is this DOTS therapy? Directly observed therapy for short course, wherein the anti-TB drugs are given under direct supervision of your medical profession for 3 days in a week. So they will be giving this particular drug, they will be coming, giving it to the patient and observing whether the patient is complying and taking the drugs properly day to day. And this, what happens when you do this? This helps to ensure that right drugs are taken at right time and for full duration of your treatment, because somebody is watching you and seeing that whether that particular is complying with the regime, chemotherapeutic regime. So there is an control over the taking of the medicine. So this is known as DOTS therapy. This is known as DOTS therapy. So what is the next thing? So what happens? There is a standardized recording and reporting and is maintained by the health worker, as I mentioned, and by them. So they know whether the drug they are recording means they are seeing and reporting. Once they have seen the drug, they will report whether the particular patient is taking the drug regularly. So this is a monitoring, individual patient monitoring program. And the normal regime is there will be 4 drugs, that is rifampicin, that is an initial phase first line therapy, that is rifampicin, isoniazid, pyrazinamide and ethanol for 2 months, which is followed by an isoniazid rifampicin course for your 4 months. So this is a normal therapy for your TB, which is prescribed by your WHO. So and the combination that ensure the prevention of your resistance by microbes. So when you give a combination of this drug, this will prevent the occurrence of your resistance by mycobacterium. This is how you try to treat the resistance. So these are some of the regimes for MDR-TB. MDR-TB means which are resistant to your rifampicin and isoniazid. So what is the initial phase? For 6 to 9 months, 6 drugs are given: kanamycin, levofloxacin, ethionamide, pyrazinamide, ethanbutyl and cycloserine. So this is the first thing. And the continuous phase for 18 months, 4 drugs are given: levofloxacin, ethionamide, ethanbutyl and cycloserine. And the reserve or substitute drugs are para-aminosalicylic acid, moxifloxacin and cap. So if any of the drugs shows any resistance, this can be replaced by para-aminosalicylic acid, moxifloxacin and ciprofloxacin. So what is the regime of this drug? All the drugs are given in a single daily dose under direct DOTS therapy. So all these drugs are given under DOTS therapy, and all the patients will receive the drug under direct observation on 6 days of a week. So all the 6 days they will be given the drug directly. On Sunday, oral drugs will be administered unsupervised, whereas injection will be omitted. So kanamycin, which has to be given as an injection, it is omitted. You don't give it on the 7th day. All the other drugs should be continued. If the intolerance occurs for these drugs, ethionamide, cycloserine, as I mentioned, ethionamide, cycloserine and para may be split into 2 doses, and morning dose administered under and evening dose will be self-administered. So this is how you try to, and as I mentioned, whenever you are giving an TB drug, they should be always, pyridoxine should always be administered to the patient during your regime of your multiple drug resistance. So what? So now regime for your extra drug resistant, extensive drug resistant TB. So what is the regime? So there are in case of your multi-drug, there was 6 drugs, whereas in case of your extensive drug resistant, if there are 7 drugs, that is capromycin, para-aminosalicylic acid, moxifloxacin, and high doses of isoniazid, clofamazine, linezolid, and amoxicillin. So these are the 7 drugs. In continuous phase, which is for 18 months, 6 drugs are given, whereas in case of your MDR drug, only 4. Examples of drugs are para-aminosalicylic acid, moxifloxacin, high doses of INH, clofamazine, linezolid, and amoxicillin. Reserved drugs are clarithromycin and thiazidone. Okay, so this is the combination which are given in case of regime for your extensive drug regimen treatment. And the same thing, reserve is para-amino. In case of patient was on para-amino, will be replaced with one of the reserve drug in regime for your, so para-amino salicylic acid will be replaced by either clarithromycin or thiacetazone. And if the patient is unable to tolerate one of, and moreover, when they are given, if they are unable to tolerate one or more of this drug, and if the patient is found to be resistant to captomycin, in that case, these reserve drugs can be used. All the drugs are given on daily basis, and injection of captomycin will be given on for 6 days and not on Sundays. All morning dose are supervised except on Sundays. Okay, this is how your DOTS therapy regime works in case of extended drug resistant TB. Extended drug resistant TB. And this is your recommendation of your for the patients as WHO recommend the different categories of your patients. So let us see the category 1. So newly treated mere positive pulmonary TB. 6 months duration is the treatment. That is initial right treatment, that is rifampicin, isoniazid, pyrazine, and ethambutol for given for 2 months. Then rifampicin and isoniazid given for 4 months. In case of category 2, that is mere positive retreatment group, that relapse or treatment failure. 8 months RIP plus streptomycin for 2 months, followed by RIP and for 1 month, then for 5 months. Okay, then RIE, that is rifampicin, isoniazid, and ethambutol for 5. So this is a drug regime. And for the category 3, that is mere negative pulmonary TB or less severe cases, 6 months RIP, only RIP, not RIP, right? Only RIP for 2 months, that is rifampicin, isoniazid, and pyrazine for 2 months, followed by rifampicin, isoniazid for 4 months. So this is the regime as recommended by the WHO. This is the regime which is recommended by your WHO. So with that, we end the session. Thank you.